Okay, so next here we have the quotient rule, and it says if you have some function where it's f of x divided by g of x, then the derivative of that function would be the g of x times f prime of x minus f of x times g prime of x all over g of x, that whole thing squared. Okay, now that is a little bit tricky here, or it looks a little bit complicated, so I'm going to show you two ways that make this a little bit easier to try to remember this. So when you're doing the derivative of some function here, so if I was taking the derivative of that same function, I might think of it as the bottom, okay, so bottom times the derivative of the top, okay, minus the top times the derivative of the bottom, and then I put it all over the bottom squared. So that's one way that some people remember this. I also heard something pretty creative, pretty clever from one of my students recently, and I think this might help too. So some people remember when you're taking the derivative of this as thinking of it as low d high minus high d low all over low squared. And I think they kind of made it into like this tune. They're like low d high minus high d low all over low squared. Okay, so that kind of helped them to remember. So that was the low times the derivative of the high one minus the high times the derivative of the low all over the low squared. But whatever helps you to remember this, stick with it. And let's take a look at an example of how we're going to do this. Okay, so we have our function here, f of x, is 5x cubed over 6x plus 2. So our top part is that f of x up here, and our bottom part is that g of x. So what we're going to do when we're taking the derivative of this, okay, is we're going to very simply do I'm going to use this here, this is what I usually use, the bottom, okay, the bottom is 6x plus 2, bottom, times the derivative of the top. Well, the derivative of the top we know is 15x squared, okay, minus, and then it's the top, okay, so 5x cubed, times the derivative of the bottom. Well, the derivative of the bottom is just 6. All over the bottom, 6x plus 2 squared. All right, so then we're just going to go ahead and simplify this down a little bit more here. So let's distribute that 15 through. Okay, so 15 times 6 there, that's going to give us 90x to the third, plus 15x squared times 2 is going to be 30x squared. And then we have minus 6 times 5 is 30, so minus 30x cubed all over, and then our bottom, we could just leave this as 6x squared, 6x plus 2 squared. But then on top, we just want to combine any like terms, so you could see that we have a 90x cubed here and minus the 30x cubed. So that's just going to become 60x cubed. So that would be 60x cubed plus 30x squared all over 6x plus 2 squared. And that would be our derivative here.